Hey friends, welcome to my home. And I thought I'd invite you in and we could watch Tucker Carlson's interview of Rob Schneider together. Remember, he's in most of Adam Sandler's movies. I think he did European Gigolo by himself. So he's very funny. So I don't. I thought we would sit back. If you'll get you some popcorn and something to drink, we can sit back and watch Rob Schneider together. And so here we go. Here is Tucker Carlson's interview of Rob Schneider.
Well, amazingly, we're just a few weeks from our nationwide tour going coast to coast, the Atlantic to the Pacific and back, doing live shows with big audiences, uncensorable, and bringing along very good friends of ours, our special guests. We hope to see you there. Tickets at tuckercarlson.com. We're hitting the road all of September. Here's our latest episode with Rob Schneider.
Popcorn? Lazy chair? Watch.
So I hate to start with this, but I read what looked like a family tragedy playing out in the news. Your daughter going after you. It's fun being a parent, isn't it? It can be hard. What was that?
Well, I want to just tell my daughter, Elle, I love you, and I wish I was the father in my 20s that you needed, and clearly I wasn't, and I hope you can forgive me for my shortcomings. I love you completely. I love you entirely, and I just want you to be well and happy with you and your beautiful baby, Lucky, and I wish you the best. I feel terrible, and I just want you to know that I don't take anything you say personally. I love you, and I feel that God has gifted this moment and gifted me to be able to just tell you I love you and I accept you, and I apologize for any of my shortcomings that I have. I wish for you to heal and be well, and that you have everything you want, including the dad that you want from me to be. I'm here for you. I love you. Whenever you need me, I'll be there. And anything that you said, I don't take personally. And if I could take away all your pain, I would gladly do it. And if I need to take the hit for you now, I'll do it. And I'll do it again gladly. My heart is your home. And a home is a place when you go there, they have to let you in. And I love you. And I'm sorry that you're having to deal with this. But this is a great opportunity because we can talk about families. I mean, you show me a perfect family out there, and I'll be shocked. But families, this is you have to ask, like, is God I'm a new Catholic. God has presented this to me, and I'm going to use it. And I'm going to say that this is when you have opportunities, like when you're being attacked or you feel like what the world is caving in on like a lot of people feel now, whether it's financially, whether it's politically, people are separating, and especially with people that are dealing with addiction, families that are dealing with addiction. It's hard. It's really tough on the family, and it really is crushing. And so if we're able to discuss and talk about that and help heal people and help they give them the opportunity to let them know this is common and that there are roots you can do to heal. And for people suffering and families suffering from addiction, and unfortunately it is bigger now than any time in my life, we need to have a path for healing. And part of that path is not just getting clean, but I was talking to my good friend, Dr. Drew Pinsky, and he said, addiction, people have to deal with resentment. That's a really important thing. And I'm glad this has all been brought up because resentment has to be addressed and managed to help keep the person sober. Families who are dealing with addiction, it's really important. This resentment, resentful people use it as a way to justify bad behavior and any kind of behavior, and not taking responsibility for their own actions, blaming others, and into destructive behavior, including even using again. So it's important that we heal that, address that, so that doesn't become this destructive thing. It's part of the healing and part of really staying sober and remaining sober and getting back to a place of happiness.
So when your daughter attacks you in public, how hard is it not to, you didn't make any excuses or blame her or attack back?
Well,
How hard is that?
if you love somebody completely, you just, I love her, and all I want for her is to be happy and to heal from this. And I really feel if there's anything that I can, I apologize completely for and accept responsibility for not being the parent that I am now with my new kids. She didn't get that, and I missed a lot. And as a parent, you're going to pay for everything you miss. And I thought that just because I was starting my career at the time, and I thought, well, I'm able to provide this school.
How old were you?
I was 26.
Oh,
So
and got divorced young.
about a year later, yeah. And she's got a great mom and did a great job, did the best job she could. But it's hard, not having a fractured home from the start is not the ideal thing. So it's difficult, and I get it, and I really feel I feel like, look, I'm here now, and whatever I can do for you, I'll be the father that you need me to be now. And I love you, and thank God that I'm here now, and that if there's something that you need from me, my heart, is open. So, and it's okay though, I feel like it's a good opportunity. It's a beautiful thing when God presents you with something. When God says to you, here, when the enemy, when people when you have attacks in your life, when they say hand it over to God, they don't mean just hand some of it over. I mean, you got to hand it over. And when you do, you will have peace. You will have peace. And there's nothing the world can do to you when you have God. There's nothing. They can't touch you. My most important relationship is with God. And if that's good, they can't touch me. There's nothing. My wonderful priest, was talked to me about this, and about if you got a good relationship with God, then you're set. But when you hand it over, you got to really hand it over. Okay, can you take it? Okay, God, I need your help, because you'll be tested in this world. They go yeah, I said, because I feel I'm in a good place. I said, oh yeah? Well, what about if they say this? I'm still okay. Well, what if somebody in your family says this? What? They said what? How do I know? So we all have work.
Well, yeah.
We have temptations to want to get angry, to strike back. There's a real temptation for people.
What's an overwhelming temptation?
It is, but our job, what we need to do as a parent is to love and accept and be tolerant and forgive. And this is the way to love. God shows us the way to love. And our job is to reflect God's love, which is everything, and tolerant and loving, and to just have compassion for what people are going through, especially in your family, and to know that it's not about me, it's about the pain that they're suffering, and how can we heal it? And we're seeing a lot of that. Unfortunately, not just, in my family, we're seeing we're seeing addiction and problems all over. And it's not just about, particularly with drugs. And the difference is, when we were kids, if somebody had an addiction to a particular narcotic or something, unless it was heroin, there's cocaine and speed and other stuff, crystal meth around the 80s. If you had a chance to, to get therapy and do something, we have families now who are dealing with a different kind of healing because they've lost their child.
Yes.
We have these porous borders now, and we have and talking about, for the Democrats who want to change the voting habits of whatever remain power in every state. It's really an ugly thing, because what they're really doing is they're just bringing in death and misery, because the people who are coming into the border are also being abused. It needs to be I'm all for immigration. It has to be legal. But what's coming in now is causing this massive wave of drugs, and it's death. And it's everywhere now. It's every city in America. 65,000 people a year It's like more than everyone who died in that 19 years of Vietnam. We're dying a year from this fentanyl. I was at the airport. Sometimes you meet somebody who just has so much grace that it takes your breath away. I mean, much more than I have or could have. This woman came up to me and said, "Hi, I really appreciate what you've been saying." I said, "Oh, thank you." And at the airport, waiting for our bags. And I was just getting a cup of coffee, waiting. And this is in Phoenix, where I live now. And we started talking a little bit. And I was flattered by that. So it's nice when people say something nice about you. And then I said, "So how was where'd you come back?" She said, "Oh, Hawaii." And I said, "Oh, it's beautiful." She said, "Yeah, but it wasn't a happy occasion." And I said, "What?" He said, "Oh, I was spreading my 17-year-old son's ashes." And I was like, "What?" She said, "He wasn't an addict. He just was a dabbler. And he didn't realize he just thought it was cocaine. And he's gone. There's no rehab. There's no getting better. There's no education. There's no 12-step thing. It's just people are dead. They're gone. And this family is crushed. But this woman had such grace about her. It's like, whew, thank God has to carry people in moments like that.
That's for sure. So how did you respond when you saw that you were being attacked? Like, what was your first? Well, the first 24 hours.
Well, if you feel hurt, obviously,
yeah.
And you check within. But then, as soon as you get out of me and get into like, well, what is how can we do this? First of all, I was like kind of stunned by it.
Right.
And they're like, what?
No warning at all.
No, and then you got like, well, I love you, and I want you to be. I can't get into the specifics of like what she's going through now,
right.
But obviously, I want her to be happy and well and to heal, and to heal means not just doing something to make yourself feel better, but to really get to some of the issues that you need to do, and to just be like, I love you. And if you take yourself out of the equation and you say hand it over to God, you have to. Because if you make it about me and what this, it's like,
that's right.
I have an adult child now. She's going to have to figure things out. And God bless her, and that she's had a tremendous success with her career. And I want her to have that peace.
Yes.
That peace that I've found, and that love that I've had. And I'm grateful for this situation, because maybe this is what it takes for her to heal, and for other people to know that about this, and so that they can reach out and they can know that to not take it personal, but what can I do? How can I love? How can I heal? What would God do here? How can I work through this? How could I use this as an introduction for her to get closer to God? So maybe there's all this potential there, but there's also the potential to realize that when you are attacked in the media by anything, is to know you cannot take this in. And if you have, there was a beautiful thing my wife and I, Patricia, just the best thing that ever happened to me, that God gave me, was this, we never did the rosary together in bed. And we never did the rosary together ever. So we were in bed the other night before I flew out here, and let's do it. And we didn't, even remember. No, she didn't remember exactly how to do it. And I'm a new Catholic, so we're literally like going over each bead and saying, Hail Marys, and then Our Fathers, and then what's this bead for? And I would tell you, it was beautiful, and the peace that I felt after that, and the whole next day, was really the power of prayer. And so, as I hope, I'm praying for my daughter. And I hope that people will pray for her.
So even in the midst of that, you found peace.
Yeah, I did. And not right away, but I did find, the peace is there for you. When you accept God and have God, you hand it over to Him. You got to really do it. And I said, God, I know there's a purpose here. There's got to be something. And as soon as I took it out of me and like my heart, my needs, my hurt, my injury, and go, this cannot be what this is about. This has to be how to heal something, and how to maybe bring this up for other people and other families that are dealing with similar things. And some good's going to come from it. It already has.
How did you get to this? Describe how you got here. to facing, I mean, I gotta say, probably a tougher moment than like a diagnosis of illness. Like having a conflict with a child is the hardest thing I would say for a parent, and yet you're at peace. So how did you get here?
Well, it's a long story. It's a beautiful thing where, where I felt close to Jesus Christ when I was a young boy, and then I strayed. But the thing about Jesus is he'll only let you go so far, and all that stuff was necessary for me to learn and come back. But he was always kind of there in the back there, like he was never left. And I think through getting lost into the world and getting thinking about my career and this and that and the frustrations of it, and thinking too much about what other people think about you and
Yes.
like where your position is in show business and how much money you make and where you are you on the A list, are you off list, you're making movies, and it's just a hamster wheel. And I think the more important thing is and what I think what our culture is suffering from now is this social media hamster wheel run, and their politics and our political parties are not helping the mental health of Americans. So
They're sitting understatement.
yeah. So if we could step back and find a more peaceful way to exist and to not live in fear. And I stopped being fearful about, because once you do get attacked, like when the pharmaceutical, industry attacked me for what I thought was just the basic humanity, is believing parents who had injured children who they knew were fine up until the point where they were given some doctor recommended drug that was absolutely supposed to be safe, and then their kid got permanently injured. I believe them. I choose to believe them, and I still believe them because they're the best witnesses to this incident that happened. We're talking about vaccination. And to even question it was you destroying your career. It's like questioning it. I thought we lived in the freest country in the world. Well, you're allowed to talk about politics. You can be, you used to be, but and you can talk about things like that. You can talk about, the United States Army spent $25,000 for a toilet, which is, or a hammer. But if you talk about the underpinnings of power, you talk about an industry that is the real drug cartel. We're not talking about the Mexican drug cartel. That's just a measly $10 billion a year. If you're talking about the pharmaceutical industry, $300 billion a year. You're talking about power. You're talking about an industry. You're talking about the real drug cartel that pays for the biggest donors. It's not just federal legislators, but state legislators. They not only control the medical establishment, they also control the medical boards that recommend things and that recommend
Yes.
what Americans are mandated to get, that children are. And then when you open your eyes to it and you realize that something that was astounding to me that Robert Kennedy talks about, and he's one of the few who has the courage to talk about it. And thank you for letting him talk about this on your show. The 54% of American kids now suffer from chronic illnesses for diseases unheard of just a few short decades ago, and 12% of those neurological damage. Neurological damage. I'm talking about brain damage, including autism and all this other ADHD and all these things, which were unheard of when we were kids. So the fact that is not the biggest story every day in the news is the fact that the media is bought and paid for by pharma, and it is. I mean, it's upwards of 75, 80% of all ads in non-political years, for all ads on all of television, on all radio, and all internet, is drug ads. And there's only two countries that allow that, the United States and New Zealand, because people realize you can't have this, because it's going to make people dependent and go, I want that drug. My family works in medicine, the Lapids, Filipinos, so of course they're in nursing and doctors in New Jersey. And I said, why? I saw it to my my cousin Renee Lappin, who's passed away now. But I said, why is the average senior on 12 different drugs? Why is my dad on 12 drugs? He said, well, there's no database that keeps track of all these drugs. And if they go to get a drug that they see on TV from one doctor, and the doctor says no, they just go to another doctor, and they just give it. And there's so much money to be made off it that we're dealing with a sick population, and that needs to be rectified. We need to get people healthy, mentally healthy, physically healthy in this country, or we are not going to have a country. We cannot afford to pay 17.5% of our GDP on health, 5 times more than they pay in Europe, and we're not getting better results over here.
No.
So if we don't get a handle on that, forget about everything else. You forget about your Democrat, your Republican, conservative, your issues. You forget about which state has abortion rights, which state doesn't. If we don't get a handle on this, everything goes.
Yes.
Everything. So that's something we need to talk about. We need to address. We can't just put a Band-Aid on it.
So never miss another episode. They're all pretty good, we think. You can enter your email at tuckercarlson.com to join our email list and get an alert about every single show, and a lot more, actually. If you're not on the list, it's really easy. Go to tuckercarlson.com, scroll to the bottom of the page to add your name. You'll be the first to know about our biggest interviews and live streams and news updates. It is all there at tuckercarlson.com.
So what happened so you attempted to talk about it.
Yeah.
I think you're informed on the subject and you're sincere. You're not getting paid to talk about it.
No, I went to a place because these parents came, asked me. Because I was curious about. I'm curious. I'm a medical nerd. I'm obviously junior college dropout, but I was always fascinated by it. And my cousins were kind enough to talk to me about medicine whenever I'd ask questions. And I was kind of a nerd about it. And when it came time for me to have a baby, a dozen years ago, I wanted to know about this particular thing that was recommended, as everyone said it was safe. And I just remember being with this one director whose wife was a TV doctor, one of those TV doctors. And as director, we were going to make a movie together, and they just had a beautiful new baby. And I said, well, what shots did you give the baby? She said, none. And I said, what? She said, yeah, they're too small to absorb those toxins right now. They don't have an immune system. They have an external immune system. Their mother's breast milk.
Yes.
And I said, well, why do you tell other people to get it? He said, well, that's up to them. So I never forgot that because it wasn't up to them. Because it wasn't up to them because you had to go to school. When we went to school, it was like 3 shots. Now it's staggering. It's 72 different doses of 16 different vaccines before the age of 6. And we're wondering, why is there people go, I can't have anything to do with that. I can't have anything to do with it. Are you nuts? So,
by the way, I should say for the record, I think YouTube will censor this.
no, they will.
They'll demonetize it just for having this
I'm
conversation.
sorry. Well, you might have to put this out there with this part cut out.
No, we'll just leave it. But it's crazy that of all the things you can say,
You can't talk about this
on YouTube. I mean, you could say, our government's illegitimate. Someone should overthrow it, or I'm in favor of transgender nuns, or you can say whatever you want, but you cannot use the V word.
No, you can't. And it's interesting though because they're so powerful. I remember talking to my friend who's one of the parents' advisory group who was involved in the 1986 negotiating with the Reagan administration for the National Childhood Vaccine Act, which Congress ruled vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. You can look that up. And so if you're going to mandate something, there's never been a drug that's 100% safe 100% of the time for 100% of the people.
Of course not.
And vaccines are drugs. Either you have a choice for your own body autonomy, your own freedom of choice when there's risks, take a risk, or if you don't have that freedom to avoid risks, then you have tyranny.
Then you're a slave.
Then
someone owns your body and can make you hurt yourself.
And then somebody could shut down that same group, can shut down the world, and they did.
So what happened when you made these points, which I think any rational person, even people who disagree with you, say, those are reasonable points. I mean, maybe I've got, evidence that shows you're wrong. Here it is. But those are not, you're not making crazy points.
Well, then we'll discuss. We're supposed to be, the idea of what happened during COVID was like, you're supposed to discuss things in a free society and debate, and then take the best of those ideas.
Exactly.
And let's see which ones are evidence-based.
Exactly.
Use the evidence. What happened was we were taking people like Dr. Bhattacharya and Peter McCullough, and say, well, this is evidence here, Dr. Corey, and but this is evidence. Well, yeah, but you're not allowed to use that evidence. That evidence, no. And so instead of saying
The drug companies don't want to see that evidence.
instead of adjusting the what should happen because based on evidence, what they did was they just denounced people who brought the evidence and said, well, those people, let's demonize them, let's denounce them, whatever. And so when I first brought this up, I was like, I did a commercial with Aaron Rodgers, who coincidentally for State Farm, who coincidentally became vaccine hesitant himself, and rightfully so, realizing
What a good guy he is.
he's a great guy.
Yeah.
But realizing the human immune system, this is before he knew any of this, so he cleared himself. He had nothing. He never talked to me about this after. We did a commercial for State Farm, and he hasn't done any since he's been vaccine hesitant. But the human immune system, which has been proved true, like you can't trust the human immune system that's been working for millions, for hundreds of thousands of years. Why would you do that when you can take this drug that we just made yesterday at warp speed? So it's just kind of a weird logic. So I came out, and then so I got attacked by the goons. And about that, this is 10 years ago, when like a few people can attack, a company like State Farm and say this is dangerous, blah blah blah, and then they can think it's a lot of people, and then they took it, So I got slammed in the media as this anti-vaxxer, which is a very interesting term, anti-vaxxer. You can complain about the Boeing 737 MAX airplane, because it is dangerous. We did have an engine fall out. A piece did fall out. You can say, you know what? There's a problem with these problems. Nobody says he's an anti-planer. This guy over here, an anti-airplane. We talking about it's an airplane. You don't talk bad about airplanes. But if you question any of the 72 different doses of 16 vaccines before the age of 6, then you're an anti-vaxxer. So anti-vaxxer, that's an interesting term. Also, like I say this in my stand-up act, I said, if a woman doesn't want to have sex with you, that doesn't make her anti-dick. She's just anti your dick. She may be open to a lot of other, members, but yours specifically, it doesn't make her anti all. So you make.
By the way, it doesn't make her a bad person.
And it doesn't make her a bad person, exactly. So we went from but anyway, the attack happens, and then when you survive an attack, that's the most interesting part, because anybody can get attacked. It's like, do you cow? Do you buckle under? Or do you just go, I'm still here. I've survived. Now what? And I'm one of those guys who, as a little person, and they say on the internet it's like 5'3". I'm just 5'5", by the way. I don't know why that matters. Only my wife says, only men care about that stuff. You never hear a woman say, I'm 5'6" and a half. They never say that. Oh, man, your egos, you got to have 5'4" and a half. Who cares about the half? But I'm one of those guys who, like, when you're little, you got to defend yourself. I remember fighting a super nice guy fighting. Bob McPeak, he was like 6, great guy. He lives in Florida. He lives a neighbor. We're friends, but we got to do a fight. And I go, like, okay. As kids, we're like, junior high, and we're gonna fight. And I'm looking, I go, like, this guy's gonna clean my clock. The only way I'm gonna get out of this is if I just get him in the nose, just whack him, and I just so just wait for it. And it's, a lot of guys fighting, it's like this, they think the bigger the swing, the better. But the guys who know about fighting, especially Filipinos who changed fighting, we can talk about that. It's all on the shoulder. It's just right here. And it's the short one that's got, you use the hip and you turn. And then, so I waited and I go, pop. And it was like, that was it. Fight over. I said, got out of that. So, but you have to defend yourself. And so I just like, when you survive and you get a little, you go, I got to be crafty about this, but I'm not going to bow to this pressure. And I never have. And I've never apologized or rebutted it because I'm right about it. And I'm going to continue to believe these people because the health of American children is more important than me making Deuce Bigelow 4, So I don't, whatever. Well, we have to continue to fight to get Americans healthy, mentally healthy, physically healthy,
yes,
and get them off these drugs, and to also have awareness for all our people about how they can learn to get healthy. Because if you go off the food pyramid, you're going to be fat, obese, you're going to have diabetes. My dad had diabetes, which is what I'm concerned about my children. And I know that was one of the things.
But it's going to cure diabetes for all time, right?
Well, that is a dangerous drug. We don't even understand the full implications of what that drug's going to do. And I just heard, I was just talking to Dr. Drew Pinsky about that just the other night. That's a dangerous drug. Get off that drug. There's never such a thing as an easy cheat. You can get off. I would just tell Americans, get off sugar and things that turn into sugar, grains, and get off processed oils, seed oils, anything. This is flour, sunflower oil, all that seed oil you got to get rid of because it's toxic, it's rancid, and it will make you sick and it causes diseases. And if you look specifically since the processed foods, and the only reason they put it in is so it doesn't rot on the shelf. When you have something that doesn't rot and go bad, doesn't grow mold, if mold says, I don't want any of that, well, then don't put it in your body. And it's palm oil, all this stuff, it's not real food. It's just to keep it on the shelf for a little bit, so it doesn't rot. So that all that stuff, we got to start learning. And that's what's interesting is like, the liberals are attacking what they can attack. Like the problem with vaccines and the problem with is they think they could do something. So that they do it. And it's the same thing with like choosing a particular gas. Like, we could be choosing CO2. That's the problem. That's what's causing the warming of the planet. Not the fact that we're, there's a giant fireball that we're circling around, but it's the gas. It's you cooking and gardening. That's what's causing it, and cows farting. So it's a lunacy. But going back, just because you think you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. Like, the scarlet fever killed more people than smallpox and tuberculosis, but you don't see a scarlet fever. There's no scarlet fever vaccine, and you don't see it rampant around the world. And tuberculosis, nobody takes a tuberculosis vaccine, but you don't see it rampant around. So they're doing these other ones because they can do something. Like the measles, this is all, you can all look it up, and it's in my book. You can do it. Speak Your Mind, America. That thankless, obvious plug, is that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. So because they could do something, like they put in the measles vaccine in 1961, and by that time, all of the deaths from measles had disappeared. It just literally there was none by 61, and yet they put this in. Because what really, and you can go to the CDC to look it up, what made the difference with human health, what changed was the fact that people weren't living in squalor, toilets, sanitation. So what happened was all the success of sanitation, which increased people's life expectancies, made people healthy. That is what saved society and cleaned up society, literally. Toilets, sanitation, clean drinking water, and nutrition. But vaccines piggyback on the success of that. And that's why we're dealing with this now.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because the big killers, cholera, bubonic plague, are really diseases of squalor.
Well, people were living in the 19th century, in the early 20th century, they didn't have a clean water source. There literally was like animals defecating and in the same places as their water source.
Right.
So
or people defecating.
And people, yeah. So it was all going. I remember there was Anders, who's the writer, co-writer of Marx. His father was an industrialist, and he was in 1857 in Manchester, England. He was walking around, and he described the people there as white ghosts. Even the common cold, he knew would wipe these people out. So that is an important, getting that sanitation and clean drinking water and cleaning things up is what really made.
So you sort of waved away, I beg your pardon, my question, because you don't want to talk about yourself, but the effect of saying what you did about health, like what did that affect your job prospect?
Absolutely work. Yeah. I mean, I got a call from a friend of mine who's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I don't have a lot of those, by the way, but he called me, and I was in Boston, and I just got off. It was the whole State Farm fair that happened, and I just got off stage, and I was kind of still shaken by the thing because I'd never been attacked by every newspaper and all this stuff, and the internet was new, and I was still a working actor at the time, making movies and stuff. My friend called me and he said, "Listen, you're really famous. Now, you're just a nuisance right now. But if you hurt them, if you cost them money, you will never work again. And these companies will sue not just you, they'll sue these other places to make sure that you never work again. And I said, well, hang on. But I said, but I'm right about this. He said, well, somebody's got to stand up. He said, and he said this to me, you have a daughter. Is it fair that she has to do this fight too? That took me out of my knees.
That's very heavy.
It is. It was.
Was this, just to clarify, was this a friend offering you constructive advice, or was this someone threatening you? Or both?
It was a really good friend who was giving me advice that he thought, and obviously somebody had talked to him, or he just knew enough to know that this is what's happening because that's the world that he travels in. He's a really good guy and a dear friend, and I think he was trying to just help me from what he knew could happen.
Yes.
You want to continue. I like to continue my habit. I have an addiction. Wanted to keep my family eating and sleeping indoors in private school and nice, I have, a car with the, charger in my house. I like to keep that. I like to keep having, going out and eating a couple nights a week and maybe traveling once a year with the kids, in the front of the plane. I have my habits that I want to continue. And, but at the same time, I said, you have to be, and I would just tell other people, you have to be smart about this and questioning things. And then we have to stand up, because to not stand up and speak, it's dangerous to stand up and speak, and it's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you money if you stand up and speak your mind. If you stand up, but when you knowingly go along with something that you know is false, that's going to cost you more. And that's something in our society, we have to go by evidence. We have to just confront these lies. We can't continue, or we're going to have a nation of lies. And I have people that call me.
Thank you for saying that. I think everything you said is true and important to say.
Thank you. I have this young actor who's the son of a very famous Academy Award-winning actor who called me and said, "I wish I could say what you say, because I agree with you. I agree with everything you say. I wish I could say it." And I said, I want to say it sometimes. And I said, be careful. He said, you have to be judicious about it. He said, I'm worried about losing work. And here's the thing, because I forget which one. There was a survey that was done by my great friend Andrew Doyle talks about it in his book. It was a survey done by I forget the group, but they said 2/3 of Americans are afraid to speak their mind. 2/3 because they might cause offense, and another third are worried that it might affect their job opportunities. So this is a real thing. We can't continue as a society if everybody's so afraid. That was what Alexander de Tocqueville admired most about America when he came here, was the Frenchman, seeing like people speak their mind here. That is a unique thing. That is unique. The idea of freedom of speech is, there's not an accident that was put first before guns. They know that if you want to really protect society, and your best weapon against tyranny is to be able to speak your mind, to be able to speak freely without reproach and recrimination from your government. That isn't to say there are not consequences for it, but the consequences of not speaking are going to be much, much higher. So this young person was telling me, I want to speak my mind, and I want to talk about it, but I'm afraid about losing work. And I said, just be judicious. Talk about it in your life, but it will affect your work if you do.
Yeah.
Some people need to stand up. But I said,
did it affect yours?
Absolutely, 100%.
So your friend was right.
My friend was right. He was right. But I want to say that to that young actor, I said, look, you can talk to the makeup person. You can talk to the driver.
Yeah. They'll always agree with you, I've noticed, through long experience.
People who work for a living, they know this is all bullshit.
Yes,
they talk to your driver, talk to your Uber driver, talk to the makeup person, talk to the boom man between shots.
Exactly.
But don't talk to the producer. Don't talk to the director. Don't talk to the studio executive, because they're all captured. They're stuck in an ideological, woke mind virus, and they're not going to get out of it because it could affect their work, because they don't operate like an actor operates. I just want to get hired. I just want to get work, and every actor just wants to get hired. But they operate from a different perspective. The executives at studios in Hollywood, they know they're going to get fired. They know it. It's just a matter of time. But they operate not what's the best movie, what can I do that is meaningful to me. They don't operate that way. When they make decisions to make projects, they operate like, what will delay my inevitable firing the longest? How do I keep this beach house? How do I keep traveling on weekends? How do I keep dating these beautiful girls who are only dating me because I'm an executive? So that's the crux of it.
It's so. I hope people watching this know how true what you just said is. It's so true.
And it's not just the entertainment. I'm sure it's everywhere. People's like, they're just worried. I got to ride this out as long as I can. But it did affect me, but it freed me. And you know what that's like. It does. It liberates you. When you no longer feel a slave to the system, when they don't own you, you are free. I mean, you got to figure out how to make a living elsewhere. But like I said to myself, and that's why I love Chris Rock. Chris Rock was like, sometimes you have a friend who we were the grown-ups together. We were together every day, and I just watched him in his mind. And he changed stand-up comedy, and he's the one who talked me into doing stand-up again. Because Adam Sandler, he loves me. And I listened to what he says, but he wasn't doing stand-up at that time. But Chris Rock was, and he was the best at it. He changed modern stand-up to what it is now. He was a real influence on that we built on, and he talked me into doing it again. And that's like, that changed me. And I said, they can take away the movies. They can take away doing a TV show, but they can't stop me. I said this to myself. They can't stop me from performing with a bunch of other malcontents in a darkened drinking establishment, where they want to come see. They can't take that away. And you know what, Tucker? They did. They did take it away. They COVID. They took it away. I didn't even perform. And then they said, you can perform. And I would go to every state that was still open. I did 14 shows for whatever capacity that they would do during COVID in the one place that was open in Nashville at that time, because they said 50% capacity. So I'll just keep doing shows as long as people come. And I did 14. I did the record for shows there, for half sold out shows. I sold out every show with half capacity. And so people didn't want to come anymore. I did 4 days. I stayed for a week. I could have stayed longer. A week was long enough. I didn't mean to sound like Trump. It was the greatest show. I could have stayed for 3 years. It was the greatest show. It was an amazing show. And the shows were disasters. But what was really interesting was people, especially for conservatives, they felt like, well, here's a guy who agrees with me, and I don't see it on TV. I don't hear that. I don't hear other comedians. It's like, it's a fearful thing. You know what? You're not going to get on TV. You don't see me on late night TV. You don't see me going on Colbert talking about any of this stuff, and that's okay. But so people, I created an audience for me. I didn't have one show that wasn't sold out last year. Maybe Roanoke. I don't know what happened there. But but anyway,
it's a tough town.
It's just tough. Now, I got to tell you, I don't know what's happening that weekend. Maybe there's a festival or something. But people want to hear another opposing point of view. They want to hear something they can relate to. It's like, thank you. I did this thing about you talked about United Airlines hiring. We don't want these white pilots. It's like, I don't care what it is. I want somebody who's the highest likelihood,
the best pilot
of us landing this thing. This is we're in a tin can, 37,000 feet. I want the guy. I'm sorry if your ideological problems or what your ideological vision is, but mine is landing safely. And so I did a thing about that, and I cannot fly without a pilot coming out and thank you. So it's but there's an audience for it and they want to hear it. So it's a pleasure.
So you felt no bitterness?
Yeah, I did. I definitely felt like, man, that was rough.
Did you take your friend's advice seriously when he gave it to you?
Yeah. No, I realized that if I'm going to continue to make a living in this business, I'm going to have to be very judicious about it and be careful and take care of my family. Because my wife didn't understand. It's like, my wife's from Mexico, which is tougher than the United States.
Yeah.
They're hard-working people. Thank God for Mexicans. You're going to come. You want people that want to work and they'll work hard. And I want legal immigration. These people are lovely, hard-working people. And she didn't understand. It's like, why would you want to risk things for this? And the most beautiful thing, and I talked to Robert Kennedy about this, and my wife, when she said to me, she came to me, I was literally in the bathtub, and she came to me, she said, I didn't understand why you would do this, why you would risk your career and income and our family, by speaking up about this issue. Because I always thought as long as you protect them inside the house, they're protected. And then we got this, and let the world take care of itself. But now I realize you have to also protect the kids outside the home. And she sees the encroachment of this woke mind virus, and the fact that, all of a sudden there's a real attack on women in our society that nobody saw that coming. And for her to recognize that, and I mean, it was really a really beautiful, special thing that I experienced, and Bobby Kennedy related to that.
Do you think that she was proud of you, your wife?
Not before that.
No, I mean, so she comes to you and says, which I think is pretty common. She says, look, I get you've got these opinions, but you also have a family to feed. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And you explain to her that there's something bigger at stake.
What is that? How can you think of there's a beautiful expression, and we all have to be careful about this too. And it's a Mexican expression, and I've been doing Duolingo for you have a Duolingo for 2 years, and I'm just nervous about learning. I've always had that, but that's my excuse. There's a beautiful expression in Mexico, which is the light of the world is the darkness of the house. So be careful about just going out there and trying to heal the world and do all these things, and then your house is dark. You have to take care of the house first.
That's right. I strongly agree with that.
You have to make sure everything's okay in there, and that you're protecting and taking care of your kids, that they know that they're loved, they know who their father is, and that they feel safe, and that they feel loved, that they're embraced, and they're being raised with a faith in God, that they know their country is a good country, and that they know that that their future is secure. And that's something that's tougher, and it's encroaching on every aspect of it. And so, while I've been blessed, and that people, find what I have to say, some of them interesting and hopefully funny, I've been able to continue to take care of my family, but to give the kids, all my children, the best education I can get. And I went to public school, and I didn't think there was anything wrong with it, because I didn't have anything to compare it to. But I will say that, you can put your kids, if you're lucky enough to have the opportunity, put your kids in the best schools you can. But the majority of our country is being educated in public school. And we have to make sure that education for the majority of these people is good, and that they're learning something that's useful, and they're being taught to be critical thinkers, to be useful, for themselves and for society, that they can come up and make decisions and not just crank out what's happening now at the university level in academia, which is they're just not cranking out. They're not making or helping people think critically. These young people, they're cranking out advocates for a particular partisan ideology, and that's it. And so this has been going on for a long time. We're late to the party to try to fix this. The ideology, which James Lindsay talks about, has been infiltrated into our society. And the Marxists knew that, the revolution's not going to happen with the worker. Why? Because capitalism works. If you work your ass off, the people here, they work their ass off, your life's going to get better.
The workers actually hate revolution more than anything. Notice.
It interrupts their lifestyle, the weekends.
Exactly.
But so they did it through education. They did it through people who had grievances. They did it through small, angry groups. And they as you know, they got into the education system, and they infiltrated it. And by the 1970s, let's get to K through 12, and then let's move on through to the university and academia. By the late 1970s, they have infiltrated it. And so you have this ideology now, and this, whether you want to call it Marxist or this woke terminology, which is just Trojan horse terms like social justice. Who would be against social justice? I'm for social justice. But when you realize it's a Trojan horse term, you go in and it's not social justice. It's racism. It's just the same crap that progressives were doing 100 years ago, inversed.
Exactly.
So you have these same progressives who are 120 years ago with eugenics, talking about these people are inferior. We shouldn't,
we got to kill them.
Yeah, we got to kill. We got to not let them breed. And then you realize these are inferior people. if these people of color are inferior, and these people, this is eugenics, science back 110 years ago, and this, but with the Nazi Germany, you saw what the apex of eugenics was mass murder.
The Nazis killed hundreds of thousands of children and sick adults in hospitals. Hundreds of thousands, I think over 300,000.
And
by the way, that's the one crime, we spent a lot of time talking about the crimes of the Nazis, which is fine, but that's the one crime no one mentions anymore.
As a matter of fact,
for it. That's why.
Well, it's what you're having now is the same racism, but it's inverse. So you're taking these people and they're like, well, these people are automatically victims just because of the color of their skin. They're victims now, and they're oppressed by these people. So it's easy to see what it really is, as it's just another way to just attack and use the same Marxist, Maoist thing where these people are the goods, these are the bads.
Exactly.
We're going to have utopia. It's just these people they're the ones stopping it. And all you have to do is give up your guns and your rights, and then we're going to have it. And then, why don't we have those people? Well, let's get those people. And so it's James Lindsay really helped educate me and a lot of others in his new discourses about what this really is. And it's important for people to get educated and for people to realize so that they can identify it in their life, in their daily life at work. Don't apologize. If people want, if you're saying something, don't apologize for it. No apologies. I don't apologize for my jokes, no matter what. These are jokes, people. Get over it. It's funny, like in a horror film, you have like a slasher, and they go like, some slasher movie. Nobody comes out after a horror film. I did not approve of those slashings and those murders. This is horrible. Nobody ever complains. But stand up, a guy talking, they go like, I don't agree with that. That's, homophobic, transphobic, and that's, sex, So it's you're held to a different standard. I don't understand why.
Wait, so I'm not a very good interviewer sometimes. You said a minute ago that you were a Christian as a young man.
Yeah.
Then you go to the entertainment. How old were you when you went into the entertainment business?
Gosh, I was just trying to avoid a normal job, because I didn't like them.
Yeah, I get it.
And the most fun thing ever was telling jokes with your friends.
Yep.
And then I saw, when I was 11, my dad took me to see George Carlin. By the way, remember when we were kids, parents didn't watch whatever you want. They didn't say, he took you to the movies. It was too expensive to get a babysitter. So my parents took me to see Planet of the Apes when I was 5, 2001: A Space Odyssey. They didn't ask you, was that okay? Was that too much? Now like my wife's like, it's not PG-13. They're not saying it's PG-13. You're not going to watch any of your movies. My wife still has never let me see any movie. They've never let my kids see any movie I've ever made except Daddy-Daughter Trick. So, that was, how I.
Wait, your wife doesn't want your kids
She won't let my kids see. I know.
see your movies?
Once you want to see Deuce Bigelow as a man whore, or like the hot chick, it does say when they're 13. So
So you go to the entertainment
I
business.
go in, and I got into it. I saw George Carlin. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And then when I was 14, or 15, I saw Steve Martin perform in front of 2,000 people. And back then, I was starting to put it together, like, because TV and movies, they're not real. It's like those people aren't real. It's like that guy. It's not real. He's a movie star. They don't realize, he doesn't go to the bathroom. That guy. And so when I saw Steve Martin in person, who also changed comedy. He's the first guy to do stadiums. This guy. And it was so funny, and I was laughing, but I saw him as a human being in the same room as me. And I said, well, he did it. He figured it out. He was able to figure out how to be a performer. Maybe I could. And that was it. And then I told my dad Marvin, who was a loving man, who loved comedy, and he had comedy albums. So that I grew up with that. And I said, Dad, on Monday nights, they let anybody go perform at this one club. And he'd go, what is it? I said, that's the Holy City Zoo in San Francisco. They let anybody go up on Mondays. I said, it's Monday. He said, let's go. So I went. He took me that night. And that was it.
And you performed?
Yeah, it was really awkward. It's like seeing those, drunk people in dark bars who were still smoking heavily at the time. They don't want to see a kid up on stage. It's like, reminding them of what they're ignoring at home.
In front of your dad?
Yeah.
That takes some brass.
He was great. You're great. You're funny. You guys are great. You're funny.
Where was he from?
He was from San Francisco. His parents were East European Jews. His grandfather was from Tarnopol. His father was from Tarnopol, who came over. And it's one of those things when they came over, they They thought they'd save money somehow if they lie about the age. So, you know, they put the different age there.
They save money by lying about
Yeah,
their
and
age.
he's only, no, he's 15, but he's 8. He's not 9, he's 8. I don't know what he did, but so he found out when he's older that I'm really a year older. What happened? You know. So and then my grandmother Molly Hoffman, she came from Ukraine. And they came over and they worked hard. My grandfather had a barbershop right next to the Fox Theater on 7th Street, up on Market Street in San Francisco, 7th Street and Market. And he had a little barbershop. He cut hair, and my dad would shine shoes during World War II. And then, you know, you'd get a nickel, dime, you know, and it was a great place to grow up. They would give him, he told me they give him literally a quarter. He'd be able to take that, you know, and I think, I'm wrong about it. They gave him it was like $1. He was able to spend the whole day and go to the World Fair on $1 by himself. And this is 1939 World Fair in San Francisco, so he was 8, just walking around by himself, not a care in the world.
What did he do in later life?
He went into real estate and carved out a little a loan business for people. Remember, for people complaining about the price of the interest rates for homes and banks now, in 1980, in the early 80s, it was 18%.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, you know, thanks to the Carter administration, they were able to jack it up. And so he would figure out a way with some investors to help get people to loan them money for a loan on their home, or to help be their first.
So like private banking.
Yeah, and he did that, and he was also just a really good guy who realized after the Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 that, you know, this racism stuff is, you know, it's stupid, it's wrong, and so he was one of the first realtors in San Francisco to rent to African Americans in places that weren't, that wasn't, and so that wasn't easy for him. And so, I mean, with that, my mother was a school teacher, and I think my mother was a war survivor in World War II. So I think that was a good.
Where was she in World War II?
In the Philippines. Ooh. Her father was an American soldier, and she never met until she accidentally met him in San Francisco. But both her brothers were killed during the World War
By the Japanese.
by the Japanese. And but she had no bitterness about it. And she really was a strong person. And I didn't really, you know, still come into grips with what my upbringing was with her. I respect her tremendously. And she just said she was never fearful. The reason I survived, I was never afraid. I knew I was going to survive. And so her mother would make take bed sheets and sew them. Because, you know, the thing about America, this is unique experiment in freedom in the history of the world. That's why it's so important that we need to keep freedom of speech and keep our freedom. Because there's no one that's going to come rescue us if anything happens. And so she would make, with her mother, they would make these pajamas out of these soft bed sheets that they had, and they would trade them, because the caste system, which is a lot of the world, if you're, you know, my mother used to say, even maids have maids in the Philippines. There's a descending, cascading poverty level that just keeps going down and down. So she would trade this with the people, the farmers, who suddenly had the most valuable thing, food. So she would walk for hours, you know, a day to get up to where they were and get this camote, which was sweet potato. She would trade for that. And she'd have to be really, really nice to these, you know, the people, and they knew that things have changed. And that's how she survived. And she said, not everybody did. Her brother's 17, Bill, was drafted by Roosevelt under an agreement that you could be in the U.S. Army if you're Filipino. You could be drafted go in the U.S. Army. So he did at 17. He was in the Bataan Death March. And he survived it and died of dysentery in there at 17. Damn. And her brother also died at 15. He said he refused to believe that his brother had died. He said, he's got to be with the guerrillas. I'm going to go get him. And my mother said, don't. She stayed up all night with him, trying to talk her brother John into not going. And she wasn't successful. In the morning, he said, he gave her 100 pesos. Hang on to this. I'm going to come back. And he never did. And then it wasn't until my mother's 60th high school high school reunion where there's only a few people that survived, where she found out why the Japanese captured him and interrogated him and killed him. Just because he was, and she didn't realize it, but one of her classmates did, because her brother was wearing their brother's U.S. Army boots. So the Japanese thought, well, he must know something.
And they killed him.
Well, what happened is at that time, there was, the form of information was rumor and innuendo. So the rumor got back that the Japanese have him. And what the Japanese said was, come and get your son. My grandmother, Victoria. But my grandmother, Victoria, knew from what happened to other families, if you go, the Japanese will torture you in front of him to make him talk, and then they'll just kill you both. So she had to make her Filipino Sophie's choice, and she had 3 daughters. She was so she stayed, and they killed him. But my mother didn't have a bitterness towards the Japanese. I never heard one hateful thing. My mother said it was war. So, and one of her brother-in-law was half Japanese, who helped, one of the reasons they survived. So that's just another.
What was she like as a mother?
She was tough.
Yeah, I bet.
She was tough. She would,
Not your average Bay Area mom.
But there was a lot of Filipinos. That was the beautiful thing about, because on my birth certificate it says father white, mother Oriental. Back then, that's what, in 1963, that's what you were called. If you're Asian, you're not Asian, you're Oriental. I think Asian was like a slur.
Yeah.
I'm not Asian, I'm Oriental. What are you talking about?
It just means Eastern.
So my dad was open to this, and it was beautiful. He was very open-minded, traditional liberal, which is the best, free speech, don't judge people by the color of their skin, women's rights, gay rights, that traditional liberalism, which has been abused to mean other stuff now. But so she was tough. If you wasted food, that was a problem. My dad had to tell her, we got to throw this food out. She said, what are you talking about? It's still good. He said, but there's mold on it. Yeah, but we can cut the mold off. She said, no, what we do is we'll throw it away and just buy new stuff of that. That was just like, that was for my mother. That was a bizarre concept. Throwing food away that you could still eat. She told me, she said they took the camote and they would mix it into water until it was basically water, just to stretch it out. So she had something. She starved during the war. And she had stomach problems her whole life. She lived to almost 93. And she said, and then they would take the skin of the camote. We'd burn that. My mother would burn it. That would be our coffee, because it looked like coffee. Whoa. I was like, wow. But she didn't say it with bitterness. It looked like coffee. Let's have some coffee, right? So it's like, growing up with that, I didn't truly understand it. And because what happens, I think, and now that I understand, what I learned from great people like M. Scott Peck and Dr. Gabor Mate, was that there's generational trauma. Because I worked with, Gabor Mate worked with me on a couple of sessions and talked to me about generational trauma. He said, what is that? I didn't go through the war. Why? I know it's not my problem. He said, yes, but it's passed on to you. Because he was, in his mother's womb in Hungary during World War II. And he said, your mother, she suffered. She must have passed on to you. And he said, no, I don't. I said, I don't think so. So when you travel places, is there anything, what is that like? What do you do? And he talked about what I do. And he said, did you bring anything with you? And I went, food.
You bring food with you?
Everywhere I go. I got a bag, I got some food in there. He said, where do you think you got that from? I was like, it's true.
If it gets moldy, do you throw it away?
Yes. And I go right back to Sprouts and I buy another. But it was different. And I think my siblings got it worse than me. Definitely. Because I was the youngest.
They bring food with them too.
You know what? I don't ask him about that. I should. But I just remember being a really young boy. My mother, my dad, he took her places, and it was nice. They would travel together and they'd go out to dinner. And I remember my mom yelling, all right, we're going out. Anybody touch a hair on Robbie, I murder all of you. And I was like, it's not for the other kids, but I'm Robbie. So I think it helped create a monster.
Was she a Christian?
She was Catholic, but then she got divorced. And she met my father, who was Jewish. And
yes.
They both didn't, I think they both made a decision about, I mean, she survived the Japanese. She could survive not being accepted by the Catholic Church. And I tried to get my priest, Father Passo, who's a great guy, to speak with her towards the end of her life. And she just declined. And I wanted her to really make peace. And I think in a lot of ways she did. And I, as time goes by, I realized that what my sister told me, Sister April, who's a lovely, lovely girl who had it worse than me. She was older. And her parents divorced, my mother's first husband. And she said, you realize we were raised by a 12-year-old girl, right? Because that's when that trauma happened. That's what like Dr. Gabor talked about with me. So that time of trauma is where they revert back to, and it just all made sense. I get it.
So how did you, if your parents weren't believers, how did you become a Christian?
I found it. I found some really happy, content people, and I go, what's going on with these people?
They were not in the entertainment business, I'm betting.
They were not. And I was in junior high, and I go, what's with these people? And my friend's brother, Ed Marcus' brother, he was a very conflicted kid, had some problems, and was experimenting with different things, and then he just was suddenly the most peaceful guy to be around. And what's happening with this guy? I said, what's happening with you? So come find out. And I went to this place, and everybody in there was like, hey, so nice to have you. Welcome. This is our house. This is your house. It's like, wow. And that's a beautiful thing that Mexicans say when you go to their house. They go like, es tu casa también. This is your house as well.
Yes.
What a beautiful thing to say to people. And I went in, and I was just really moved by how welcoming this was. And this didn't feel like when I was in, my house. How people like, anytime somebody called, my mom would answer, what? Is Robbie there? Why? Well, I go to school with him. So? Well, I just want to talk to him. Why? Well, because he's my friend and I want to check it out. And so I grew up with that. My mom, the world was a dangerous place for her. Where are you going? Don't go outside. It's dangerous. Because for her, she grew up, that was a dangerous place. So, you have to have a balance with that.
But you wind up in a classmate's church, and it seems like a place of refuge.
A place of peace. What is this? And then when you spend time reading the Bible, when you spend time with other Christians, you feel the presence of Christ. You just do. When I was doing the rosary I have no problem with any other religions. If you believe in Christ, you're my brother. And if you're not, you're my brother too. Those who are not against us are with us. And those who are against us are potentially with us too. We just have to be there. You feel the presence of God. And that is a powerful thing. That's moving. And it's healing. And so while I strayed, there's always in the back of my mind, I'm never going to go away. There's that, Jesus, I'm never going to go away. And when you need me most, I'll be there. And so it's times like this, though. It's just like, wow, it's beautiful. And I hope I can, I'm just very grateful. I'm lucky and fortunate. I feel so close with my family, so gifted by everything. And all the problems that you have are just, you got to interpret it. Like this is a potential to bring you closer to God and to help people and to bring you closer to where you need to be. This is all opportunities. And so I think as people are going to get really angry when the election happens, whoever wins, and I would just tell people, it's not, Robert Kennedy talks about this too, it's not the end of our republic. It's not the end of democracy. It's going to be more encroachments. If the Democrats win, I believe there will be more encroachments on freedom. But it's not the end. We still have the, this tried and true legislative, executive, judicial. And even though the legislative still continues to abdicate their power to the executive, which, it's not supposed to happen, where when Biden comes in, he does 125 executive orders. We're basically hiring an emperor. But still, get involved at the state level. Get involved with your school board. And I would say one of the biggest dangers of an incoming a continuation of the Democratic Party. And I'm not saying that the Republicans haven't done their abuse and the lies that the Bush administration, the wars they caused. But the problem is, if the Democrats get back in, I'm worried about the educational system. And there's Moms for Liberty that talk about this, is giving more money from the feds to our school boards at the state to control what happens at the state level and our local school boards. So the school board meetings will mean nothing. So it doesn't still be the feds will. They're funding most of it. 26% they want to go to. I think it's 13 now. If they do that and they control, then we're really talking about another problem with indoctrination of children. And that's going to be a real. I mean, that's one thing we should really, really be aware about. Act locally. Get involved.
What will you say to people whose candidate loses in November?
Calm, no violence, and know that it's going to be 2 years. Hold the reins. No matter who wins, hold the reins. It's going to be 2 years of what damage they can do, and then they're going to be lame duck for the next 2 years. And just hold the reins. And I'm saying, don't give in to violence. Don't be. And unfortunately, our social media is creating and exploiting and making money off of turning people as extreme as they can so they can increase their addictions. And these addictions that we started with, these are addictions to social media. And that's something we got to control, get a handle on. And I would just tell people, anything new that's coming into the world, whether it's airplanes. Okay, well, it was first invented in 1903 by the Wright brothers. Supposedly, the Russians and French say otherwise. However, 15 years later, this new invention, 15 years later, they were using it to drop bombs at and kill people.
Yes.
And then it took another 20 years for it to become aviation, where people can actually get to places by the early 1930s. So right now with social media, it's just at the time where it's just dropping bombs, killing people, destroying people, and canceling people and that stuff. So we'll have to give it time. And just for schools, can you imagine if you and I took our television set to school in the morning and our newspaper and our daddy's dirty porn magazines? Imagine that I found underneath the stairs, by the way. I noticed that we didn't have the same money for makeup as Playboy. But anyway, my point is, can you imagine bringing all that? That's what you allow when you have phones in schools now. So this is a real problem we have to get a handle on. And when you get bullied or whatever, or people would say bad things about you, you farted in the middle of the class and it was humiliating. Well, at least when you went home, it was stops, turns off, I got them out.
Yeah.
No, it never stops. They got the phone and they got people saying stuff about you and this how many likes you have. So no phones. I mean, just flip phone, no social media until 16 minimum. So, just calm down, no violence, don't give in to it, and just know that you can act. And this is a country, it's a republic. It's not this parliamentary system in Europe, which is where these unelected people, the European Commission now are controlling what happens in other countries. And, thankfully, Hungary is still holding firm. And it really is under threat. Right now, we have free speech. There's the free speech in England is under attack.
Yeah, I would say.
Comedians are under attack now. So that's Jay, we talk about in the book. You can do it. The comedians under attack. And now they have this hate laws, and free speech has to be open to protect it's not the safe stuff or stuff everybody agrees with that needs to be protected. Appropriate or approved speech is not the stuff that needs protecting. It's the unapproved stuff. And you have to have all of it to have friction in society, to have the best ideas arise, and let them be like the ACLU, when it used to be a decent organization that used to protect rights. They've defended the Nazis' right in Skokie, Illinois to march, not because they agreed with the Nazis, but because the Jewish guy who was in charge of the ACLU at the time said the best way to defeat the Nazis is to let them speak.
Of course.
So they went to the Supreme Court and then to fight for them for their right to speak.
Well, that's how a self-confident country behaves. A country that believes in its own values in its founding documents. They're happy to tolerate disagreement because they know that they're right, and that if people are given the freedom to choose, they'll choose them. And I feel like censorship suggests that people in charge know how hated they are and how stupid their ideas are. And that's why they can't handle the challenge to them.
Well, if you if you abdicate your free speech, your right to unfettered speech, and you let the state decide, then they're going to decide what's in their best interest.
Well, of course.
And they're going to limit the speech, and they are trying to. And it was really it shouldn't be surprising, but it was surprising to me that when it was discovered thank God for Elon Musk, and God bless him and protect him, and pray for Elon Musk, his protection. Thank God for the Twitter files, because the terrific work of Matthew Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi, this was really happening. They were able to discover that the government was infringing on the rights of Americans and limiting and censoring speech that they disagreed with for what the government wanted to do. So, and then when they had congressional hearings, instead of correcting the situation, which was egregious and a violation of the First Amendment rights of Americans, instead of adjusting it based on this new evidence, this anti-American attack on our system and free speech, the Democrats were just like attacking the messengers, attacking the people who brought this, and trying to undermine them and demonize them. And it's like, wow, this is the time to regroup and go, hey, this is bad, let's fix this.
Yes.
But they didn't do that. And that's what George Washington warns us about. When partisanship, when people worry more about parties, then they can really be a threat to the nation.
That's for sure. So you started on Saturday Night Live in 89, I think 89.
89-90 season.
With
The glory years.
Well, actually, I think that's fair. I mean, the cast that you started with, they're all still famous to this day.
We had great casts. But all I remember from that time is the newspapers saying how much we suck and we weren't as good as the first
Who
cast.
was on? Can you just remind us who was on the show that year?
Oh, well, the great Dana Carvey, Dennis Miller, Mike Myers, really talented guy, and Phil Hartman, of course, and the new guys coming in, which, was Nora Dunn was there, and Jan Hooks, the great Kevin Nealon, great guy, and talent. And then the new guys was me, David Spade, who got hired together as writers, and then the next fall, 1990, Adam Sandler ended up coming, and my buddy who I lived right across the street with, he lived with Judd Apatow right across the street from me in North Hollywood, and then Chris Farley came at that time, and it was a really good time for a comedy, and it was a great place to be in their 20s, and that's
35 years at least that you've lived in that world. What's the response from your colleagues, peers, friends to some of the things that you've been saying for the last hour?
They're coming around. They don't agree with all of it, but I would say that they're agreeing more to what they're seeing, because it's tough, because it is insulated. You can stay in your political echo chamber. You can absolutely avoid any any questioning of your belief system, because belief systems, what we're talking about, is the toughest thing to have challenged, for sure. Once you can talk about, like, am I a good cook? I don't know if I'm a good cook or whatever. You can talk about that, but if you talk about your belief systems, talk about somebody's sense of humor. Do you have a good sense of humor? Yes, absolutely. Why wouldn't I? But not everybody. Like, you can't be a good cook. Not everybody has the best sense of humor. You get to that belief system and start to question. People get angry, and but I think people are waking up, and you gotta have people with differences of opinion. The difference is, as you know now, it's like, as we've seen before, if you disagreed and you work whatever. Now if you have a different opinion, you're a bad person.
Yes.
And you're judged for that. So now people don't want to give their opinion, which makes the expression, and it makes our culture poorer. Because we need everybody to talk and let the best ideas rise to the surface.
Exactly.
Not judge them from a particular thing and for a particular point of view that they have every right to have.
So, but do you think that people in the world that you've spent your life in would agree with what you just said? I mean,
I think so, if you get them one-on-one. Not on Twitter.
Not on Twitter.
Not on Facebook.
Has it? But have you been able to preserve your friendships despite political differences?
Most. Some people, sadly,
Yeah.
from the Bay Area who watch one of the networks that has 4 letters, or what is it? 5. they
I used to work there, and I didn't know that.
they love me, but I don't hear from them as much. And they're lovely people, and I love them. And I feel like if they did see me, they'd hug me. But they just, they said to me, "There's a lot of people who like Gavin Newsom."
Actually,
Well, that's what they're from Northern California. There's a lot of people they really like him, and you know what? He's in power, and there was a chance that we were like, worried because we saw what he did to San Francisco. It's interesting because like you take guys that are really authoritarian, they have no problem closing your business.
oh no,
But if it's a business that they're associated with or they get in with, they'll keep open. And Justin Trudeau, the dictator of the North,
yeah,
he will have no problem trouncing on the rights of Canadians who are protesting. Who really what helped open and end COVID was those truckers who risked everything there. And this a-hole, cold weather dictator closed their bank accounts and just completely took away their rights. And that's the thing about it, man. Your rights, they are on a piece of paper. And unless they're backed by the will and by the goodwill and by the people insist on it, it's just going to be a piece of paper. And so that's what happened in Canada. And those people's rights were trounced upon. So luckily, though, but that was enough to like wake people up. I think in the United States who had guns.
yeah,
And Robert Kennedy and I talked about this. He said the reason why we got out of COVID because when I said that I told him years ago, if you ever run for president, I'm going to support you no matter what, and I do. He's a great thinker and a wonderful man, and really wants to help educate people and get people healthy. I don't agree with everything he says, but who does? The point is, we agree on enough. We can't just go Republicans, Democrats. If you're willing to work with us on this issue, I'll work with you. I don't care about what if
Amen. I
you're
agree
crazy or something
completely.
else. And so I'm willing to work with them and to to move this forward. I said, but the guns. Here's the thing: the only reason we got out of COVID was because there are at least 400 million guns in America, and the government can only push citizenry so far. And I said that's something that as someone who grew up in California, didn't understand that. I understood pretty quickly during tyranny, where the people could shut you down, where like a governor could say, you can no longer open your business, even though scientifically you can't. There was no science behind it, and it never had been. And so they were allowed to do that. And the fact that there's been no legislatures that have restricted the government's executive powers to prevent that from happening again is worrisome. And I said, this, they could turn it off at any minute. So I do think that because of that situation, because of COVID, because people saw the COVID tyranny, and now it's been exposed that there was no reason for the 6 feet of distance was just made up by Fauci and his cronies over there who were all paid by the pharmaceutical industry. They have, my friends have come around to go, maybe Rob's not crazy. I have friends who go like, you know what? I didn't realize, we just thought you were nuts, but now they've come around.
When did your views start changing, and why?
I've always questioned things. I mean, I hate to say this, but like I've been kind of a contrarian. Go, why do we have to do that? That sucks. Let's do something else. I grew up with my dad. My dad, set an example for just a troublemaker. So I kind of, this way, I didn't start out. And comedians aren't intellectuals. We're de facto intellectuals.
Yes.
We got forced into it because everybody else got demonized and silenced. Academics were like, they couldn't talk about stuff. Scientists and doctors. And comedians could still get on stage and still talk about it. So these other people got silenced. So we kind of have to step into that vacuum.
It's true.
And then I just do what I can. And, I'm this college dropout.
No, but that's, it's, Dave Chappelle becomes a leading public intellectual.
People, exactly. I saw him in 2016 because I go, what is happening here? What is this like? And I went, I'm going to go see a show. And there's 2 shows happening. There was the show of his show, which is brilliant. And then there was a show of the audience looking at him. Well, that was another show. Because they were looking at him, please make sense of the world for me. Please, because it's not making sense anymore. And he would. And it's like, and that changed me. And I realized, well, that's what, that's the way direction to go. And that was 2016. So, but my dad was a guy who would he was friends with this IRS guy who used to be high up in the IRS. I can't say his name. My publisher.
Good friend to have.
Yeah. He said, because my dad was pissed off. He had to pay these taxes, which were much higher in the late 60s than they are now.
Yeah.
Very high. You know, just it was crazy higher than now. People think about, I got to pay tax. They were higher. They're like 60s in the 60 percentile. So and he said, yeah, I'm pissed off. He said, so what happens? He said, I get audited every year because he had a private, business, basically a private little bank. And he said, what do you do when the IRS agent comes over? He said, well, I give him his own room and I give him a box and have coffee, whatever. He said, don't do that. I said, what do you mean? He said, just give him a box. Put the stuff on the floor. Put the stuff in another box. And, he said, bring the kids over. Let them play and run around the room. He said, he'll be gone in an hour.
Don't make it easy for him to harass you.
He said, just go have the kids run around. Don't make it comfortable, too comfortable. And so we would run around, and I couldn't believe because my dad would never let me run around. There's people in the office, and I got there's people. He said, just play, do what you want. My brother like, what? Really? So it was a disaster. We're running around, dropping, breaking stuff, and all this stuff. And it was my dad was like, I said, this is different. I didn't understand what it was. So now it's years later, but that was my dad's kind of way, like giving it back to the man in some small, fun way where he can get a laugh out of it. My dad used to love to laugh and get laughs out of situations in whatever way he could. And I guess some of that rubbed off.
Did they stop auditing him?
Not as much. And they were definitely quicker. But he was a genius with math. My dad was a math genius. Or a calculator. He just figured out. I couldn't believe what he would do. And
did he live to see your career?
He lived to, thankfully, he got to see a movie might become a big hit. And it was he called me, left a message on my machine. And he said, well, Robbie, I think you finally got a hit on your hands here. I went to the theater, San Bruno, 2 theaters, and they're both sold out. So I think you got a hit, And my mom started getting into show business. She said, the Batman movie made $400 million, but their per screen average was higher because there was in 4,500 screens. So the per screen average, when you look at it, is not as much as your movie. So they got into it quick, and they're very proud of me. So that was really nice. My dad got to see that. He got to go and be there, and he died a month later. But that was just beautiful. He got to see that. And go to a premiere, and my dad dressed up. I got to sit next to him and my daughter, Elle, on this side. And it was just... that was beautiful. I miss those times, and I miss the phone calls and calling and him checking in on me. But hey, Dad, let me call you back. He says, you always say that. What can you talk now? And I wish I could have that conversation back. But those are beautiful times. And to have that support of your father. That's why it's so important to support and love your kids unconditionally and give them to reflect God's love onto them. And that's our job as a parent. And in society, and I fail at being the best person I can be, and I get angry, and sometimes I spout my mouth off. But when some people, attack people that I care about, it really bothers me. And I gotta calm down,
So you got cut off. You were talking about Canada and the tyranny there. Obviously, lots of great Canadian people, and you would agree. But the country's in turmoil. It's an authoritarian country. But you were punished by the Canadians for telling naughty jokes.
I was. They really went after me, and it hurt. Not at all. I love it. I remember my favorite thing was because it was actually the name transphobe. It's just fill in the blank, whatever you are.
Yeah.
So you can tell jokes. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if we're just going to throw biological reality out, the truth. It could be, not nice, but it's never hateful. No. The fact that, and I said, I did some jokes about, that I do my stand-up act, that if I had a son, and if he sucked at sports like I did, and I wanted him to be a champion in victory, I said, well, then just go, said, listen, it's not nice, but just go tell him, I want you to be, you're losing to all the guys. I want you to go and tell the coach that you're a girl. And then, no, that's the best part. You get to keep your dick. You can keep the whole thing. The whole thing. Doesn't matter. No, just tell them. Then they have to accept you. You just say it. And they said, then you win it. Then I do this thing. And anyway, it gets big laughs, but it's also like, that's one thing they complained about. And people were laughing at that outrageous, humor. And I said,
The Canadians were mad that the audience laughed.
so one guy, it was the same guy and all the complaining. And I remember like they were really laughing and then they kind of got quiet because they're too polite. Canadians are too polite. They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, which ends up hurting everybody's feelings because then you end up having some guy who loves China running your country.
Exactly.
Hires China. So it's important to speak up and speak freely and say when your countrymen. I said I have nothing to apologize to you, Canada, about. If you know what I will consider an apology. Consider it when you apologize for what you did to those truckers and what you that ugliness of not supporting those people who are risking everything to drive all the way across the country, shut the country down so that this tyranny could end. And it was a powerful movement. And it was a movement to stand there and let your government officials call them terrorists.
Yes.
That is
And put them in prison, which they did.
disgraceful.
It is.
Disgraceful. And so when you make that official apology, I'll talk about like how I felt and why I did certain jokes. And I have no apologies to you at all. And I'm glad I did it. And I'll do it again if you let me back in the country.
Which I assume they won't.
I will not be allowed back in the country. Just for hate speech, for jokes.
And you're not allowed on late night TV either.
I don't get invited to.
Do you care?
No, why would I? I mean, like, it's not. I mean, as I said, it got on Twitter and then Fox News, of course, which I said, much late night TV is just political indoctrination with comedic imposition.
Yeah.
It no longer resembles comedy as much as cheering on the rhetoric and attacking a particular one half of the country. And when I saw the dancing syringes, I was like, oof.
But you know all those. That's the weird thing is you know all those guys, I assume, because you worked in that world.
I know most of them, but it's easy to. And God bless them, and I hope that they can come around to become more independent in their thinking. Because when you can literally replace the dialogue. The jokes from one late night guy to the next guy, and then put them in the mouth of this guy, and it's just there's no individual point of view. Because it is really ideologically captured and trapped, and I hope that they would realize that that's limiting. I would hope that you realize
limiting, soul destroying.
I don't think it's good, and I think people have woken up to it and they're like that's not representative of our country, and I think it's a job to question authority, no matter who's in authority.
Exactly.
Question Saturday Night Live at its best, truthfully, was trying to make our friends laugh. And question authority, make fun of authority, no matter who's in charge. I remember we were making fun of Bill Clinton. We had Julia Sweeney played Hillary. Played
Monica Lewinsky.
No. She played the daughter, what's her name, Chelsea.
Yeah.
And we're like, you can't go after somebody's kid. How dare you? I'm like, well, it's a kid. We're not. She just put braces on. So there seems to be like an outrage with liberals. They don't have as good a sense of humor. They just. Well, I should say, I'm sorry. They're more sensitive, and they get outraged, and they don't like it. So,
but at the time, Saturday Night Live did it anyway.
Yeah, they did, and they're coming back to it. I really think that they're making fun of Biden they have, and they got a good crew there, really talented new group, and they're gonna. It's an institution, and like any institution, whether the particular late night show or a network. Or Saturday Night Live, any institution is going to be susceptible to this ideological claptrap, and it is. But it's also you can understand it, and I think as I was angry about it, and I have to come to it from a place of peace and understanding. If I'm going to help it, if I'm going to participate in this culture, I have to come from a place of understanding, and it doesn't come naturally to me, but I got to come from a place of understanding, tolerance, forgiveness, and empathy. And it's hard to fight against that. When you are getting this, you can only talk about this, and everything's got to attack half of the country. And they are susceptible to that. And hopefully they'll realize, because their ratings are getting smaller.
Yeah.
The number one guy is a very funny Greg Gutfeld. My buddy Jamie Lissow goes on the show all the time. That's the number one show. So if it's about ratings, about money, well then think about the money. And I think eventually Hollywood, if they're anything, they're whores, and they will do what makes money. You think that Sony Pictures wants to have a Christian division? They didn't care about that, but they do now. Why? Because people like Angel Studios are making money, non-traditionally, and they didn't see that coming. When Mel Gibson made Passion of the Christ, they tried to destroy that.
Oh, I remember very, very well. They hated him for that.
They did not take him out, and that became the first real internet-like sensation, and they couldn't stop it.
He's a tough man.
He can take it because he has a faith in God, and he's like, and Catholicism is the closest to the original words of Jesus, and that's why it works for me. And there's a film that I want to make called about the Shroud of Turin, and it's the Shroud of Turin is the burial cloth of Jesus of Nazareth. It is, and the fact that the Stirp scientists tested it in the wrong place and didn't quantify that there is these French nuns who were trying to repair in the 16th century their Lord's burial cloth, that they would do this French thing called this French weave called an invisible weave that altered the findings of the testing, the carbon dating.
Yeah.
And so there's this beautiful movie that we want to make, and I'm going to make that. And it's just expensive to make movies, and obviously, I don't find myself in the good graces of Hollywood right now. But luckily, there are enough people who want to bring a message of healing.
Are you going to approach Disney with that movie?
No.
You don't think Disney's going to come around anytime soon?
What's so funny is that, when I got the Disney Channel, my ego was like, maybe they have the on the Disney Channel they have the hot chick, and they would never make that movie now. And I said to it, they didn't have it. But it's on Amazon Prime, baby. So Disney also is another organization that caught up in what sounds good: social justice. The equity. Well, equity. Yeah, whatever it is. But what equity is a grievance. But it's people like, I want this, and the idea that somehow we're going to get the same outcomes, and that they're guaranteed. It was like Kamala Harris's dog whistle now is this equity thing. What if we don't have, as Thomas Sowell says, if we don't have the same outcomes in the same family, how are we going to have that in society? We have to have a meritocracy. We have to have the best people. We have to have sanity. So, but Disney, no, they're not going to make that movie. And I hope that they do well. It's a company that I worked for many, many years ago. It's the best brand in show business. I will tell you a funny story that when I was there, I think Bob Iger had just taken over from a great man. I really love Eisner. He's the one who turned that company around. And he's a fan of my movies. So I love the guy, of course. When Iger came in, and then I was still there, and you're out when the new regime comes in.
Been there, yeah.
For a few months, been a few months, and they were talking about the movies. And unfortunately, I was involved in, at the regime. It wasn't making a lot of money for movies at that time. We were on our way out. We all knew it. And then there was a meeting with the board of directors, and I think Senator Mitchell was one of the on board, and they said, and Iger said, well, this is what they looked into the boats. Well, the boats made 18 million last year profit, and then the parks made 34 million profit. Why the movies? They lost money. Why do we need to make these movies? Let's just not make movies. Just do the boats. And he said, well, Mr. Secretary, I think the movies are what get people on the boats.
So U.S. senators aren't the best judges of
no, surprisingly,
aren't
the best judges of what movies should be made for children and their families. I hope Disney comes around. They see what happens when they get too woke. They get spanked.
Yeah,
they get spanked, and they that's a company that I got to root for. And I got to hope that they right the ship. And then, money has a strange way. America, that's the thing about America. People come from all over, in America, whatever their belief system. America has a wonderful seductiveness about working your butt off. You get successful, making money. And so we've had a wonderful check and balance here. Usually, with what makes the most money, let's keep doing that.
Yes.
So I would hope that Disney rights its ship and gets away from this trying to indoctrinize our children. How awful is that?
Depressing.
it was really bummer that the fact that my wife and I would have to watch the movies first before we let our kids. In the last few years, we have to watch the movie first before we let our kids see it. But let's just check it first. Then my parents never did that to me. They took me to see The Godfather, Sonny Corleone. They didn't ask me, how did you deal with that? They didn't want to get a babysitter. So when we would watch these movies just to make sure, well, my wife would, she does most 90% of the child rearing, and to make sure that they're not getting any stuff that we don't want them to have.
Yes.
And that's not okay. That's not good for their business. It's not good for society to you're putting out stuff there that is undermining traditional family.
Well, and trying to destroy the lives of kids. I mean, that's pretty dark.
It doesn't get any worse than that.
How would you rate Trump, not politically, not personally, but from a comedy standpoint?
Well, I met him a few times. Nice guy. I liked him.
You think he's
Very
funny?
likable. Absolutely. That's the thing about it. It's like, you have a guy who's genuinely has a sense of humor. He
Yeah.
tries to make jokes. And then the jokes are like, he said this, will he be a dictator on day one? But then it's okay, it's a joke. He's joking. He doesn't, They're like, no, he's going to be, So he's got to be super careful. That's why I feel sorry for anybody in the public eye. And unfortunately, during COVID, he listened to the wrong people. And he trusted the wrong people.
Yeah.
But I think he learned from that. And I think this time, hopefully, I don't think he's going to, make that mistake. I hope not. I hope he doesn't just put in bankers in charge of the banks and then the, pharma people in charge of the CDC and the FDA. I'm hopeful. But I think anybody who doesn't need it, I wouldn't want to run for president.
No chance.
But he's subjecting himself to this. Wow, that's rough. And I admire anybody who wants to serve their country in the capacity. And if you think about traditionally with John Adams, to be a doctor, an attorney, the highest thing he could be was to be a public servant and go into politics. That's what he felt was his highest calling. And I think we've moved away from that now. So I want what's best for this country. And I do think I like governments that are less, administrations, I should say, that are less confident so that they don't want to go around and start more wars, blow up the world. And I think we're at a time financially in this country, you just can't keep spending another trillions and trillions of dollars and expect this to be magically taken care of. This is an issue, this is a real problem. And this administration, and the same thing with the Republicans in Congress, this Ukraine war has to end. We got to get out of it. Whether it's Robert Kennedy, who's a great guy, or whether Trump gets in, and we have to end this war because it's different than just these skirmishes and smashing up parts of the world, which is also awful. What they did with, what the Obama and Hillary Clinton administration did to Libya was just dreadfully awful. And you saw they
Killed all those people for no reason.
for no reason. And then what's happening in Europe and the people who are leaving, and it's still a mess there. That is something that's a war crime. That's a human rights violation. And we got to stop this war because this guy has the most nuclear weapons. And I'm saying he's going to use it.
We might.
But if you keep poking a bear in the eye enough, that bear is going to lash out and do something. And over 350,000 Russians have died at least in this war. That's like 7, 8 Vietnams for us over a 19-year period for us. They lost more people in World War II. They're the ones that won.
I don't know.
World War II. They 20 million people. They know what that sacrifice is. And they're not going to bend for this. We have to. It's not going to be perfect. Like in any divorce, Ukraine's not going to get everything they want. Russia's not going to get everything they want. But there has to be a cessation of human carnage. This has to stop. And whatever we got to do that, whoever administration is going to do that. And the Republicans also have spinelessly, Senator Graham is just a warmongering weasel. These people need to be kicked out of office, even if they're replaced by a party that I'm not fond of right now. We got to get rid of these people and if you are for war, get rid of them, vote them out. If you find out who your senator and congressman are voting for so that we can end this and stop it.
As a Christian, what do you make of politicians who call themselves Christians and then cheerlead and vote to fund carnage that doesn't help anyone, that results only in killing? Like, that doesn't seem like a Christian position to me.
And they are hypocrites. And they are hypocrites because not only are they continuing the slaughter, but they're also financially benefiting from it. So you have at least in some ways, the cat's out of the bag. Biden, what's left of Biden, admitted that the money's not leaving the country, it's just going down the street. To the military industrial complex. Raytheon's got these $100 billion. Don't worry. It's like, no, let us worry. Let us worry very much that we are exporting this murder, we're exporting this slaughter, and the taxpayers, and that the congressmen also can invest in this. That congressmen, senators, that can make money off this slaughter. That is truly evil.
I agree with you completely.
So we need to stop that, and hopefully this new election will bring about an end to it. It's got to stop. We can't let it spread. We can't let it fester. And it's not going to be perfect, but no divorce, no end of war is, but it has to stop.
So I want to circle back to where it began, which is your conversion or your evolution through Christianity, Catholicism. How did that happen?
Well, there's two beautiful things. One is to know that there is far too many stars in the sky that are necessary for the universe to continue. There seems to be, and there's far too much spermatozoa flowers for flowers to continue, and they don't need to be that beautiful color. There seems to be an exuberance in creation. There's just too much, and there seems to be a celebration, a celestial whoopee, as Alan Watts would say. And that's a really beautiful thing.
There's too much exuberance in nature. I love that.
And there's definitely a joyfulness to all of it. It's like, wow, look at that. Sometimes you look up at the clouds and you go like, that's as beautiful as anything that Monet could have ever made.
Yes.
And it's temporary. Everything is temporary. So that's like when you realize that the pyramids are at their half-life, 5,000 years, and in 5,000 years they'll be dust. And I go like, oh, how much more so us? And if you think, if our works, whatever we do, if you think our good works are but dirty rags to the face of the Lord, how much more our pride, our vanity. So that came to me by having children and the incredible beauty and gift that they are, and how they see the world, and that their eyes point out to see everything. That they know that they're connected to everything, and they have to be taught that there's a separation between them and their mother. This is something that they just naturally, they know they're a part of everything. When the astronauts look back from the moon, if they ever went, they saw one thing.
If they had gone.
If they had gone on the set that they were on, where they were shown a picture
in
of
Laurel Canyon, I think.
They saw the picture of her, and they saw one thing. And we're that one thing. And then at the same time, when this is coming to me, my beautiful children are having a second chance at to be the father, be a better father this time, more present father, to see the rise of evil in the world, and to be concerned about that, and to know that now is the time to be courageous. Now's the time for people to step up, say injustice, whether it's the current attack on women, whether it's the educational system not educating kids. I say, take your kids out of college right now. Now is not the time to let your kids go. How much do you have to hate your kids to send them to Harvard undergrad right now?
I agree completely.
The business schools are great. Still going good. They're all conservative too, 80%. But so you see a rise in evil, and you have to know that like this is happening. And I've been very blessed that I got to meet some people who educated me about evil. And in a meeting, Dr. M. Scott Peck, when I was young man, and reading his books about the first self-help book was his. It was The Road Less Traveled. And it was a book about how to be a better person, how to grow as a human being spiritually, and not take the easy road of just repetitive behavior or just not learning, not growing, but take the harder road, becoming a better person, learning, loving, being tolerant, being forgiving, being patient. which is, you could easily see how he transitioned into Christianity, because he was a Christian without saying. He was just already had the followings of Jesus in his heart. And so it was a natural opening. And he had a very interesting story about him, about how he was the doctor in the murder of the massacre of My Lai, which is the Vietnam massacre in the late 60s. And he was assigned as a psychologist by the Army, the U.S. Army, to kind of figure out the psychological makeup of the company baker who did the massacre. And so he did. And it was very interesting, his findings. One thing is, the only reason we ever learned about the massacre of My Lai was because the helicopter pilot who witnessed it flying above couldn't live with it anymore. And so a year later to the day, he confessed and just said, well, this is what happened. This is what these people were massacred. And so during the psychological evaluation, which the Army never released, he said that these people were people, wasn't like these particular company had members in it that had some grievances, and that they had other issues and problems, and some of them maybe had joined the Army to avoid this or that, or were in prison or whatever. And then that also was just one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that they were being in a war that wasn't getting as much support back home. So they were going through, and they were getting sniped at by the enemy, sniper fire, and they were just killing their friends, and they weren't able to get the enemy. They weren't able to get them. And it just kept happening. And so by the time they got to a village, they said, where is it? Where is it? Where are they? And the people, and this was something interesting because it reflected on my childhood, because Asian people, when they are nervous, when they are frightened, they laugh. That is true when, like, all my relatives, when they are nervous or when they laugh, that's their go-to thing. So when the Vietnamese people who were having guns pointed at them were nervous and afraid, they laughed. And then these people went ballistic at that point and just murdered the entire village, just murdered them all, killed them all. And so he did this and handed it in, and the Army never released it. So moving further, he wrote a book about after he became a Christian, and then wrote a book about healing human evil called People of the Lie. It's a short book, but very good book about evil, and it's important now to identify and to help heal human evil. And it's a fascinating book, but it helps you identify people in your life and people who are capable and who are evil. And evil does exist, and we need to arm ourselves with God, and arm ourselves with knowledge so we can protect ourselves for what's arise in evil. And the last chapter of the book, one of the chapters, which is really stunningly awful, was this one kid who was depressed, and he went to go see Dr. M. Scott Peck, and he found out that his brother had killed himself. And he realized this is a really good kid, and he's depressed, obviously, his brother killed him. And then he found out that for a birthday present, his parents gave him a gun. It's like that. I'm just absolutely stunned. And but it wasn't just that. It was the same gun that his brother killed himself with. So there was a realization. And he talked to the parents, and he realized these were evil people. And so that potentiality for human evil, we need to recognize and help heal, protect ourselves, protect our families. And the last chapter on it, which is demonic and satanic possession. And it was like, I'm reading this book. It's 3:00 in the morning at this point. I'm starting to freak out like this. And but he postulated this theory. He said, like, the people who seem to be possessed seem to be very angelic people that this entity is trying to overtake. And they're fighting back for it, to free themselves. And evil, even evil, it has to succumb to the will and of Jesus Christ and must submit to it. And which the theory that he postulates, well, this is somebody who's fighting back. So therefore, it makes sense that there are people that don't fight back and just accept it and go with it. And that demonic possession becomes complete. And I think we have to know that that's something that exists, is real, human evil, whatever you want to call it. And so what Dr. M. Scott Peck in the bigger picture tried to explain was that, like, obviously science and theology had to split at a certain point to survive, because theology was crushing science.
Yes.
When you have when Copernicus discovers that the sun is a solar, the beginning of the middle of our solar system, not the Earth, and it's not part of the church doctrine, that has to be recanted. So obviously science had to split. So you had the laws of nature, which is just, they just took the lawmaker out. And they still laws, just like we have theological laws. So when you have that separation, what Dr. M. Scott Peck tried to do is to bring it back together. So when somebody's like a murderer or somebody's bad, in science, medicine, you call them sick. Theologically, you call them evil. They're one and the same. So in the attempt to cure human evil, I think it makes us, we need to do both and to work together. And I think through bringing people closer to God, bringing our nation, which was founded under God, I think we have a chance to heal our nation, and because there is a rise in evil, and I think we all see it.
So it sounds like you're saying the rise in evil turned you toward God.
Well, I think both bookends. The beauty of it, and my children, and the beauty of seeing what God's gifts are, and there's so many, and to be. You have to recognize that this, whether it's a cycle or what happens, that there is evil. There seems to be a rise in evil in the world. What's happening, and just like with in Europe in the 1920s.
Yes.
The New York Times called these small group of people a bunch of misfits, and nothing will ever come of them. The National Socialists. I think we need to be very careful how we move, and I believe the United States must continue to be the guide and for the world as an example of freedom, not perfect freedom, not a perfect society by any stretch, but a one that aims for equality, that aims to be able to express itself, and free speech is the beacon call for freedom in the world. And nobody's swimming away from America. They're not trying to get out. They're trying to get in for a reason, because this is the greatest experiment in freedom in human history. It continues to be. And we must fight and be vigilant. And now's the time for courage to protect it. So that's why I wrote this book.
What an amazing conversation. Rob,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for having me, Tucker. Oh, I feel like I owe you for therapy. Let me see how much money I got on you.
For therapy.
Oh, this has been a great.
I sat silent like a good shrink, just taking notes with somebody who
I'm sorry.
There's trouble with his mother.
I have a lot here. Robert, what are you doing? Put that down, Robert. Robert, stop messing around. Stop, Robbie. See what happens?
I grew up with that.
See what happens? You fell down. You hurt yourself. See what happens?
Did your siblings become comedians, by the way?
No, they came a very good audience. They did. Yeah. That's sweet. My sister, she's my favorite laugh. My dad was. My mother would laugh at the right time, every time, and then she'd go, "What does it mean? What does he say?"
But she was laughing because she was nervous and afraid.
She was laughing because everybody else was, so I'm sure she was nervous. So, but she would laugh, and to be polite. I mean, that's the thing. Filipinos are so the nicest people.
They really are.
They even have a country not even named after anything Filipino. It's named after King Philip. They don't even want to change it. No, we're good. But it's not named Filipino. It's like, what about this cultural appropriate? No, it's okay. We like it. We're used to it.
They're a great combination of sweet and tough. They were tough under the Japanese. Really tough.
They're tough.
They never stopped fighting.
No, they're tough, and they love America.
I know.
You will not go to a home in Manila, you won't find in one of the homes here. You will find a picture of General MacArthur. You will find it for sure. They love America. When I was there in 1972, a little boy, I'll never forget. They still had the bayonets of the Marines, American Marines who died. They still had the bayonets there with the helmet on it. They were still taking care of it every day. It was 1972. It's like, it was absolutely stunning. But that's how grateful they were for the sacrifice. For some other people coming from another country to save them.
Yeah.
That's
from true oppression. The Japanese were, I love Japan, but the Japanese were, Imperial Army was very, very harsh.
Unbelievably brutal. And, but that they thought themselves as liberators. That's why they hated the Philippines. That's why they didn't take them prisoner during the Bataan Death March.
Yeah.
My uncle was a soldier. So, if you fell down, they just killed you. And the Japanese killed maybe upwards of 70,000 Filipinos. Then nobody knows. Nobody knows how many, because they didn't take them prisoners because they were fellow Asians that were fighting against them.
Yeah.
So they took umbrage to that. So they wouldn't take them prisoners. They didn't like the whole idea of it. So that brutality for such an incredible culture.
It is an incredible culture.
And an incredible people. And a beautiful, clean, organized, wonderful country. But just let you know that there's no country that is not susceptible to do horrible things and to perpetuate evil in the world. And we have to, be a buttress to it, to really think about our actions, and to make sure that we're coming from a place of reflection and that we're doing the work of God. And this country is a good country. I love this country. I will fight for this country. And I want to raise my kids in this country. There's no other place to go. It's like, we'll just go to this other place. This is it. This is the last stand for freedom of the world. This is it. So we're saying we're gonna fix, we're gonna fight, and we're not going anywhere. And I want to make sure, whatever time I have left, God willing, that God has given me health and a beautiful family. Whatever time I have, I want to make sure that the potential for my kids to have the same, to live their dreams, this crazy kid, Filipino Jew, and have a chance to live his dreams, get on Saturday Night Live and say live from New York a Saturday night, and make movies that my dad could see. What an amazing country this is. How beautiful. My mother, she never thought of herself. I was American. My father's American. Her father was an American soldier. But she's a NEET, so she was older. So she came to San Francisco by accident. But she said, I love this country. Don't anybody ever say anything bad about this country. Ever. I love this country. And she did, with a passion. People who come here from other countries, they get it. No. They understand what an incredible, unique society and what this offers. So that was drilled into my head.
You said you wanted to end on a prayer?
Yes, I would. I'd like to end. I'd like to end on something that my friend said right before this new flap in the media about me. He said, "What an incredible coincidence!" And there is no coincidence. Everything's meant. This is a reflection for the day. August 10th. We've been our own worst enemies most of our lives, and we've often injured ourselves seriously as a result of a justified resentment over a slight wrong. Doubtless, there are many causes for resentment in the world, most of them providing justification. But we can never begin to settle all the world's grievances or even arrange things so as to please everybody. If we've been treated unjustly by others or simply by life itself, we can avoid compounding the difficulty by completely forgiving the persons involved and abandoning the destructive habit of reviewing our hurts and humiliations. So I would say, thank you for this time. Thank you for this time, Jesus, and allowing me to speak my mind. That this was a wonderful conversation with my new friend, Tucker. And God bless this great country and protect your children. God bless my daughter. God bless all the daughters and all the people that are having problems in the world. We thank you for all these opportunities that you give us. In Jesus' name we pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
right. Well, hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, whatever time you're watching it. And so, some interesting things that they discussed, uh, mainly vaccines. He seems to be anti-vaxxer. I didn't realize it, and I've been an anti-vaxxer since probably my last son was born 2008. I wish we had not vaxxed him. The doctor informed me that he couldn't get to school unless we vaxxed him, and I was like, well, then we'll homeschool him. I imagine how that went over too. But anyway, he wound up getting vaxxed, but I wish he had, or any of my children. So I would consider myself an anti-vaxxer. Eugenics was another thing that was brought up, and whenever you Google those two, you come up with Bill Gates. Apparently, Bill Gates is into vaccinating the world, and his father seemed to. There is a conspiracy theory, I guess, which I seem to take up before I find them. His father happened to be the head of Planned Parenthood, and that kind of explains why that he's for vaccinating the world, and there's been shown that he is trying to sterilize most of the world, at least India. But what I read while I was watching this was Africa. And so, I guess Bill Gates thinks that his genes are the better genes. He tends to like the environmentalists, depopulation. That's why that Fauci and the Chinese released the COVID virus on us, I believe, was so that to get rid of the excess population, like Scrooge says. I truly believe that is the case. They didn't mention him. Of course, I'm going to, because after researching him, it's a little suspicious that Bill Gates, Fauci, the head of the World Health Organization, WHO, and the Chinese government met and discussed what to do in the case of a pandemic back in just a month or two before apparently that the virus was released. So this is, it's kind of interesting. All goes together. All makes sense once you wrap your head around it, think about it. But anyway, so that's Rob Schneider. And so that we'll say good night.